Okay, hey guys, my name is John. I just introduced myself in the meetup introduction, but I've been working on a game called Santa's Slip Up that I made in a game jam in April of last year, and I've been pushing it towards commercial release, and I was just going to show some video of my progress. So, all right, this is going to suck. Okay. So this is the video, and as the first person up, I can tell we don't have any sound, so we'll need to check that. This is what I made at the game jam. The theme was delivery, and this was the idea I came up with, that Santa Claus has messed up his Christmas delivery, and he's dropping presents, and you're an elf that's to go behind and catch all the presents. And Nick, who's not here tonight, he did the music and the sound effects for the jam. This was the first time I'd used Unity in a long time. I had to relearn it. If you've done Ludum Dare before, you know you get a rating at the end of the jam. This was actually not rated that well. I've made games that have been rated a lot better. But even before I started the jam, I wanted to work on something that could push towards a commercial release. I thought I would release it Christmas of last year. That was a bit too ambitious. As a lot of people in this group know, it takes a lot of work to make video games. And dropping my glasses. Okay, all the bad stuff's going to happen to me, and then we're going to be cool. If you'd like to play that game, there's the QR code. I should have mentioned that first. But it's on my itch.io, johnsensei.itch.io. And this is sort of a side-by-side comparison of what the game looks like now. A year and 3 months later, we've got a character selection, so you can be Sugar Plum Mary or Alabaster Snowball. We also have a tutorial. In the original game, you had to drag the elf itself. Now you can drag anywhere on the screen, but testing it at the demo day, most people could not figure that out, so I made a tutorial to kind of teach people you could drag anywhere on the screen. New artwork, new UI layouts, and in the itch.io version, there's 2 levels. That's all I could make in that weekend for the game jam. For the actual release, those 2 levels, it'll be free to download, and you can play those 2 levels, and then it'll be an in-app purchase of 99 cents after that to buy the full game. And I am looking for testers, so everybody who has an iPhone, we have about 2 minutes left, so get those iPhones out, scan that QR code, and sign up to be a tester. I'll wait. I'll wait. This is what I'd planned most of my talk to. If you're on Android and Google Play, you can also be a tester. I just need to put your email address, your Google Play email address into a system so you can talk to me at the end of the talks, and I can sign you up to be a tester on Android. What are we testing for? Just general gameplay. The in-app purchase has not been implemented yet, so you can play all 10 levels right now. If you're on iOS, if you've never tested anything before, you'll be prompted first to download something called Test Flight. This is an Apple app that's completely trustworthy. And what it'll let you do is while you're testing the game, you can take a screenshot if you know how to do that with your model of iPhone. And then when you take the screenshot, you can also leave a comment for me, and I get an email with the screenshot and the comment as the feedback. Okay, so I got about 1 minute left if there's any questions.
What inspired you to do something Christmas themed?
So the delivery was the theme for the jam, and for Ludum Dare at that time, a bunch of us got together at IHOP, and when they announced the theme, we're all just kind of throwing around ideas, and people had said boxes, and I had already, before a game jam, I like to do what I call stretching or warm-ups, where I just make little mechanics in the game engine to practice before the jam actually starts, and I already had one of like squares falling from the top of the screen and you had to catch them. So I don't know, some people consider that cheating. I don't. But I was like, well, I've already got this. Let me see what I can make from it. Yeah.
2 parts. How did you realize that people were having trouble figuring out the drag function? And what made you think that was the problem?
So when I first played the game in the jam and I'm using my thumb to drag the elf, my thumb is like blocking the presents and the mountains and the obstacles. And I was like, this is not a good experience. And at the demo day, last November, I set it up and watched people play, and they would always just drag the elf. And I took the drag anywhere on the screen from other shoot-'em-ups out there, and so I wanted to implement drag anywhere on the screen. And then when I saw people play it, they're always dragging the elf, their thumb's always in the way, so that's why I was like, put the tutorial in and force them to learn to drag anywhere on the screen to play the game. 5 seconds left. I'm going to cut it there. But thank you very much for listening.
All right, cool. Hi, my name is Andrew Gooder. I'm a music composer, video games, film, TV, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes, usually I make like serious stuff, but we also made ridiculous stuff growing up as kids, and different bands and things. And then, lo and behold, people started asking us to make ridiculous stuff. So this is a cartoon that we made. I scored the guy, and it's about kids stuck in a video game. And then we made a music video based on that as well. Here.
Need supplies?
What? No, local shopkeep. I do not need supplies, for I, shopkeep, I must warn you, your store has been set ablaze.
Oh, my shop, yes. Do you need supplies? I have a few wares.
Let's take off you the fires. You are on fire.
I've got a few wares here.
I don't need supplies. You're on
Jim?
Please. Oh, your face is melting off. Oh, no. Oh, right.
Where did you get all this stuff?
Yeah, well, a shopkeeper was having a fire sale.
We need to finish this dragon off. I agree.
You're the cock point. Any ideas on how we accomplish that?
Dragons hate moonlight in this game. Luke John will blind him with moonlight to distract him. His dustwind bird will leap into the air using his piercing axe of lightning.
Yes,
and
that sounds
fire.
fantastic.
There's no moon out, though.
There's that, right?
Does anyone have a moonbeam potion?
You're not gonna believe this, but I got one. Oh Lord, did that just...
Did you just lie?
A moonbeam potion in your turn vortex.
Was that wrong? I gotta plead ignorance here, because I... Yes, it was very much wrong!
You're gonna have to use it before it wears off.
Billy! That actually sounds pretty hilarious.
No, I am not doing that. You will never see me doing that.
Let there be light!
Coming? You see it?
Oh yeah, totally! It's pretty good! The Sprinter! My dude!
My dude!
So this is the same song, a different version, but actually like a rock song that we made. So make ridiculous stuff. It's fun.
No. Well, hey, I'm Jeremy, and I made a path tracer earlier this year and wanted to demonstrate how to do that manually. So path tracing is a type of ray tracing and a method of rendering 3D scenes where you shoot thousands or millions of rays out into the scene, have them bounce around, and use that to determine what color your pixels are on the screen. Here's my game scene. We have three characters, Mr. Lightbulb, Mr. Polygon, and the Void. The light bulb has a brightness of 2.0, the polygon here has a brightness of 0.5, and the void has a brightness of 0. I'm going to start this here's the screen. I have a 4x4 grid of pixels, and I'm going to be shooting 10 rays into each pixel. And you can pretend that the camera is roughly about here and facing the game scene right here. First ray, I shoot out into the scene here. It hits the so every ray starts with a brightness of 1. First pixel first ray hits the scene. You multiply you multiply 1 by the polygon's brightness of 0.5 to get 0.5. That bounces off the scene out to the void, and then you multiply that 0.5 by 0 to get a final ray color of 0. I then do the same thing. I hit this, and then I hit the light bulb with 2 and get a final brightness of 1. I then do that 10 times, I shoot 10 rays into the scene on this pixel. They all hit the polygon, and let's say 3 of them hit the light bulb, and then the rest of them all go out to the void and have a brightness of 0. If you average all those together, you end up with a final brightness in this pixel of 0.3. And I'll draw that right there. Let's see how much time. I see. So if you do the same thing, let's say these 2 pixels have you shoot 10 rays, they hit the polygon, and 2 of them go and hit the light bulb, and then 1 of them hit, and then the rest of them go out to the void. So you have so these both have an average brightness of 0.2. So you draw these a little darker. And then say this one only one of the rays bounces off and hits the light bulb. This one will be the darkest square here. For this pixel right here in the corner, you have so the light bulb here doesn't actually fill up the entire pixel. So say about 5 rays hit go off into the distance, and then 5 rays hit this. So you have 5 rays at a value of 2, and then 5 rays at a value of 0, and you average that out to make a value of 1, which on our screen is white. So we leave this pixel empty, and then the rest of these the rest of these 11 pixels, all of the rays shoot out into the void, and so these are all black. And once you color all of those in, I'll bring out the cake after it's been finished. And you have your final ray tracing. Ooh. I have about 40 seconds left if anyone has questions.
I have one.
Yeah.
So you keep saying that like 5 rays hit, or so 10 rays hit, or whatever.
Yeah.
Which means that the rays must be different in some way, or they would all do the same thing. Are they different in their angle or their position?
What I forgot to mention is once the ray hits an object like a polygon, you then use the power of math and a random function generator to then randomly point the next reflected ray in a different direction. So if you put 10 rays at this pixel, they'll go randomly in any direction, and some of them might hit the light, and the rest of them might go out into the scene and hit some other object. Or go to scene. So.
Alright. So, hi, I'm Justin. I got a nice 5 minutes of game design for y'all, talking about borrowing ideas. I've made a couple of projects so far in the past few years that I'll be using to guide our discussion. So, first approach I want to talk about, I call it yes and. Very similar to like improv, people are kind of throwing things at you. You're starting with something broad, and you're kind of building up to it by adding new things on. And then, unlike improv, eventually you put that top bun on and say it's enough. You know, making a nice edible game sandwich. I use this approach in my project called Snogbird. Some of you may have seen it. I brought it to the last demo day. It's a 2D platformer. We want it to be arcade style, meaning you go through specific worlds, and if you die, you go back to the beginning. But unlike other arcade games or other roguelikes, instead of changing things about the levels, we change what you're doing in the levels. You get a random mission like kill all the enemies in this one, collect all the things. And you know, in a perfect world, that would be enough. But this is my bad example for you all, because a few extra pickles hit the top. The top one got a little soggy. And eventually it kind of spiraled out of control. But that's a story for another day, because there's more to be said in this 5 minutes. I also want to talk about yes, but when you start something specific, instead of adding things on, you're actually branching off to something new, which might be straightforward like this here, but in most cases it's probably kind of jagged. You're kind of seeing what works, what doesn't, and so on. I'm using this in a project I'm working on now. It's called Ad Blocker. It's an action puzzle game, kind of like the genre classic called Panel de Pawn. If you haven't played it, don't play it. Wait a couple months and play mine. Alright, but it's yes, but because we started from the question, can we make this more competitive, right? Like it's Panel de Pawn, but we're focusing on what's head-to-head about it. So you can see here on the left, in both games they're kind of trying to match the same block. But over here on the left, you match it and the garbage kind of falls down on the top, kind of arbitrarily. But in ours, we call it linear garbage. It pushes straight across the bottom, and it's more direct. What player one's doing to player two. And we figured this change was enough, because it makes it a tug of war instead of just two people playing the same game, not really talking to each other. Which brings me to the final point. What is enough, right? Because you have this nice looking, very edible sandwich, and you're thinking it might be enough, but you really like tomatoes. If you put this whole giant tomato on top, it won't fit in your mouth, right? You all following me, you all eat sandwiches. So I say enough changes depending on the team and the project, based off of these three factors I got right here, based on what the scope of the project will be, like how big it can be, how much it can be, the vision for it. You don't want to lose sight of like what it is, what you're trying to do with it, and how possible those two things are for the people you're working with and the time you have. So I have 2 minutes, we're doing great. I had another example. We're gonna say that we're making a game that's gonna be like Papa's Burgeria. If you're not familiar, you make burgers. But in our game, you make sandwiches. So to make a sandwich, right, you add all the ingredients, you toast it, you serve it. It's simple as that. Let's say that we've made all this, we have a little extra time, we want to put in a little something extra. We have two options. On the one hand, we could do sandwiches and pizza. You know, the steps are the same. It's kind of like the same thing with a fresh coat of paint, but it might change our vision a little bit. Like, we're not Subway anymore, we're more like a bar and grill, I guess. But on the other hand, we can add chips, which like fit thematically with sandwiches, but you have to increase your scope to have all these new steps you didn't have before. So considering these things, I don't think there's a right answer for which one you add. I think it depends again on our three factors. Like if you have a bunch of artists and not a lot of programmers, you might want to add pizza and just reskin everything. Or if you're a bunch of like computer science students not doing anything else, you can add some chips. Or you can add a secret third thing that I didn't even include. It's all up to you really. But you have to be wise and don't let your top bone get soggy with pickles like I did. So I did great on the 5 minutes. I have 30 seconds left. This is my information. I'll be looking for ad blocker testers soon, if anyone wants to stay in touch. Or if you want to hear the same talk from someone more experienced, that videos from the guy who made Smash Bros. You have 10 seconds. Raise your hand if you have a question. I won't get to answer it.
Cool. Hi, I'm Caleb. I'm a professor of computer science at Tennessee State University. So today I'm going to be talking to you about how science and academic research intersects with gaming a little bit. And really, there's two major areas, right? There's core sort of gaming research, and there's applied gaming research. Within core research, one of the big areas is obviously AI. That's been huge over the last few years, but realistically, AI within video games and research in AI have been together for as long as both of those fields have existed. The two kind of areas that I see as the major areas that people research right now are procedural generation, which really answers the question of how do you make content algorithmically. A classic example of this is like roguelikes, but it goes way beyond that as well. The other area is sort of behavior AI, right? How do you simulate human behavior to make better enemies or better allies or things like that. The other sort of core area of research in gaming is gaming theory. And this is really divided into ludology, which is the study of how people play games and what makes them fun, and narratology, what makes a compelling story, right? And a lot of people look at the intersection of these two, like how does story influence gameplay and vice versa, right? Then there's applied research areas. This is more where my work falls. One particular area that gaming really intersects with academic research is in education and training. So gamification is a huge thing, right? Can you turn learning into a game? The sort of most famous example of this probably is like Duolingo, right? You have lives, you have scores, things like that. But there are people in this room that have made educational games, right? I'm thinking of like John's Hiragana Breaker as an example of gamification of learning. Then there's also simulation, right? So can you learn by practicing within a simulated environment? You'll see this often in like medical simulations and military simulations and things like that. And often those kinds of things are written in game engines. They'll actually have people either physically or with a controller act out a simulated scenario that's written in a game engine and interact with NPCs to practice their skills. But we also study human behavior with gaming, right? A big one is looking at teamwork. So there's lots of studies that look at how people play games collaboratively, like multiplayer games, to study how people work together, things like that. We also study interaction. How do people interact with computers? How do you design a good interface for a game? How do you design input devices, things like that, with gaming? And I'll finish off with a few things that I've worked on in my research. So I work mostly within that education and training domain. So here's a couple examples. This is a sort of 3D game called Crystal Islands. It's a project out of North Carolina State University that I've collaborated with. But basically it's a 3D world. The students, you give it to like middle school students, and they go and they explore science concepts by solving a mystery. So in the case of the classic version of Crystal Island, it's basically a mystery of what disease is plaguing this island, right? And so by talking to NPCs and interacting with the game elements, you sort of learn about the ecology and the science of disease. Here's another example. Excuse me. This one's a little bit more physical. It's less of a virtual world. It's more of an augmented reality. So we have students, again, like middle school age students, elementary school age students, and they wear like position tracking sensors on these hats that they're wearing, and they move around physically in their classroom. And what that does is it moves a digital simulation. So in this case, for this image, it's a simulation of fish eating algae and interacting with sunlight. But there's other ones, we can look at like rabbits and how they eat vegetables that grow on the ground, or bees and how they pollinate flowers, right? Using the same sort of position tracking technology, interacting with a game engine. So there's a lot of different applications. I've worked on more than this too, but I didn't feel like getting those IRB approved for public talking about. So I appreciate your time. I have like 20 seconds, so if you want to ask a question, I think we have time for like one.
What do you think about the psych test at the end of GTA 5?
I've never played GTA 5, so I don't know.
They give you like psychological results.
Oh, really?
Like you went to the shrink or something.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting. It's similar to, I guess, what I was talking about with the human behavior and studying like how humans interact with each other or interact with the game.
It's really funny.
It'd be interesting to look into. I've never played it, so I'm not sure. But yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to email me or reach out on Discord.
Okay, sounds good. So hello, my name is Su Yanwang, come from China, Chinese, and I just to show off, so this is my YouTube channel. I make some like interesting stuff on my channel and made by Iron Engine, so I will show off like roughly 5 minutes. So I will show this first if I can tell. It's like something like scary.
I got so frustrated with ads on YouTube. I was watching.
That's perfect.
First one here. That's a door. That's kind of scary, like there's a single portal, like you transfer from something to space. This one, this is a mirror trick. No, very interesting. It's a mirror. So there's still clearing, you can change. You can see the camera movement.
What makes it glitch out when you get close to it? Do you know?
Because there's clearing, the camera collide with the like, so it's there. With this one, I made a prototype like it's a globe. You can do construction. You can rotate, the Earth and directly. So you can rotate, place some object on the globe, like a construction game, that's it here. So it's right clear, you cannot put it on the same place,
Are the shadows, are those baked in, or are you like rotating the camera around the thing?
Shadow is the spotlight. So it's similar to the sun, there's sunlight from one direction. The last one I want to show is, I think this one. Yeah, I made a manual plugin, like, this is the manual. Let's say it's giving me the screenshot. So you change like. So this is the new screenshot where you are. So it's a new place. Hello. The general video or audio settings. The key map.
I think it's fine.
I can also change language. Any question?
Sweet. Yeah. Hey guys, my name's T. I'm pretty new to the Nashville game dev scene. I also haven't done any public speaking in like years, and I haven't really prepared an actual script. So basically, coming out of high school, I was thinking I wanted to be a journalist. That ended up not really working out so much. Mid-COVID, I went back and I went back to school for like cybersecurity, and ended up transferring over to, or not transferring really, because it's an unaccredited school, but I went to a mentorship for video game development. So what you see here is the main character, Dean. He's a journalist. He's from Earth, but you see him here on the planet Rowan. He's kind of a anti-establishment figure, which you'll see here shortly when he talks to another captive. As you can see, we're underground right now. That's very important for the world building. They kind of prefer, like if they have a mountain on Rowan, they kind of prefer to build into the mountain and dig tunnels and live like kind of below ground as opposed to building like ugly skyscrapers that seem as a little gauche. But so there's a number of stealth elements I want to introduce. Not everything's working too well in this particular demo. Essentially, this is my student project, what I've gotten done by the end of the classes. So I'm going to show my mentor the feedback for it. He clearly deserved that. I remind you that the character's a pacifist and can use stealth and non-violence. There actually is a firework feature where you throw a firework and they go to the firework. When I recorded this, there were some issues where the fireworks were simply falling through the floor. So that didn't make it to this cut.
Oh, thank God.
So this dialogue system's all built from scratch. But I've got MetaHuman rigged with the Geppetto plugin. It's on Marketplace for the lip sync, as well as the voices. It's if I had more time, I'd pull up blueprints. And, so he didn't last long. He wouldn't have made it out. I don't think it's physically possible for him to escape because there's so many enemies and they're very observant. So your character, or the main character, he makes his way upwards. You see here, you can kind of see through the sky window there and start to see some of the downtown area. The fact that you're seeing buildings at all makes it, like in the context of the world, that means you're in the slums. That's where it's, that's not where you want to be. That's dangerous. All of the like rich people are basically living on what's called the Zenithium, which is the satellite-looking thing up in the sky. It's very bright. You can see it if you haven't already. So that's, yeah, he's coming up on the exit there. Quickly dispatched the door guy. I'm sure he deserved it too. Yeah, so once you make it outside, clear atmosphere change. Again, since you see these buildings are clearly in the slums, if it was some of the nicer areas for one, it would be, like I said, like in, but we're like under the, mix up words here. Even though it's underground, it's very nice, very refined. That's not, this is an example of that. But naturally escaped through the sewers. Giant bugs are not happy with their passage. I kind of feel bad for him. This is like kind of a mini boss towards the end here. That would be like the guard, the place is called, or the country is called Posidonia. Kind of like Poseidon, they're supposed to be basically Atlantis, but set up shop on another planet. And yeah, you get to your flying taxi and you make your way.
During renewal by Anderson's BOGO 50.
Yeah, thanks guys.
All right, we're in business. All right, we'll ray of sunshine here. Okay, games industry is crashing, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the people. So you might be saying, don't be stupid, Jeremy. Last year was a banner year in video games. We had the best reviewed video games in like 20 years. Look, we got Street Fighter, Armored Core, Alan Wake, all this stuff. Spider-Man, Baldur's Gate, Zelda. The data's in, right? It proves it. And this screenshot of Baldur's Gate 3 really brings it home for us, right? Thanks, games journalists. You guys are really on top of things. But was 2023 the greatest year in gaming, right? Maybe it was. I mean, the Metacritic was insane. The best year in gaming, the games journalist says. I mean, and with well-reviewed, popular games like Final Fantasy 16, Diablo 4, Starfield that nobody regretted purchasing ever, how could it not be, right? I mean, there's a couple headlines, like a couple game studios are closing down. Like, there's small studios, there's not that many. Okay, there's a few more, but they're small, right? And then it's like, oh, wait a second, that's Volition, Embracer, PlayStation, Take-Two, EA had one in there, Xbox. Something's going on here. Last 2.5 years, 30,000 layoffs in the games industry worldwide. 30,000, right? I borrowed a few graphs from Matthew Ball's excellent blog here. Consumer spending is down 15% in the last couple years on video games. Mobile revenue down 23%, and if you're trying to start a studio, VC funding is down 77%, and the publishing scene is much the same way. It's all cratered in the last 2 years. People are playing less games than pre-lockdown. This is not just the games industry, right? So we have a music industry legend, Rick Beto here. He's noticing the same thing in music, and he's attributing it to a decline in game quality. He made this video, why is music getting worse? One thing is people are using computerized tools to enhance their performances and become more synthetic. Even in the studios, when they record, they pitch correct, they beat correct, and everything kind of becomes robotic and perfect, right? What this means is the quality floor raises, but at the same time, the human performance, the thing that makes everything great, the imagination is coming down. So that means everything we see is in this sludgy middle quality ground right now. Not only that, the tools allow music to be generated very, very quickly. So you noticed last year, 100,000 songs were uploaded to the streaming services every day, 100,000 a day. Right? Video game development has hockey sticked up as well. In the last 10 years, so many games are coming out, right? The internet was just like, yo, Rick, you just hate the new music, right? You're just old. And maybe that's true. So he's like, all right, let's look at Google search interest over time. 2004, music interest peaked. We are down 75% of that right now. People just don't care that much about music. They don't care much about art either, and they don't care that much about video games. This spiked in 2011 for Minecraft, and it spiked again in 2020 for lockdowns. So what's everyone doing? They're watching short form videos, right? Because when the quality is mediocre, 15 seconds, you don't mind devoting 15 seconds to it, but you're not going to devote 15 hours to it. With video games, we've been in this crash before. Let's go back to 1977. Atari released this Atari VCS, soon to be 2600, had 128 bytes of RAM on this thing, right? They sold it for $200, which is over $1,000 in today's time, so not many people bought it. But in the arcades, there's this game called Space Invaders that everybody loved, right? So they're like, hey, why don't we port this over? We'll sell it for $30. $30 is $115 in today's money, right? But people loved it. They bought 6 million copies. This is like $500 million, right? This kicked off a firestorm of game development. People were making so many Atari 2600 cartridges, they filled the stores with it, and they were all bad. They were terrible, right? But there were so many of them that it led to the video game crash of 1983. You go to bargain bins, you buy all these games for $2 each. There were so many games. So were some of them good? Maybe. Who could tell, right? You'd have to be a detective. You've all heard the story about how Atari buried 700,000 cartridges in a New Mexico landfill because they couldn't get people to buy them or play them. They had to throw them away. So how many games did it take for them to bring the entire industry to its knees? 517, okay? There's 200 here on this one GameStop shelf, right? There's 10,000 on the PlayStation Store. There's 13,000 on the Nintendo eStore. There's 50,000 games on Steam right now. Okay, who knows how many are in the mobile stores? It's crazy. So this is the modern landfill, right? Our modern digital landfill. Yes, the game industry is crashing. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The games industry was saved in 1985. Nintendo Entertainment System came out, like single-handedly with all these amazing games. They saved the video game industry. They had a walled garden, so not everyone could put their games out on Nintendo, right? They had to approve it and put their seal of approval on. Oh, I'm so far over. I'm sorry, guys. They also created Nintendo Power Magazine, which gave us the trust of creators. I'll keep talking. Oh, thank you. So you actually had a way of finding the good games as opposed to the bad games. A lot of these new magazines were inspired by that. This led to the online phenomena of GameSpot and IGN that you've heard of today, which then led to whatever these modern headlines are, and then the eventual crash in the games journalism. So, but anyway, we also had this thing back in the day called friends. These were other human beings that we would spend time with in person. We'd lend them records, we'd lend them video games, we'd play games with them, right? Sony rediscovered this when they launched the PlayStation 4. They taught people how to share games again, right? And by doing so, they basically blew up the Xbox One and cemented their dominance in the games industry. So how do we save this games industry? We build high-quality human games, we bring back walled gardens, we establish credible curation, and we make new real-life friends. This is the most important part. Make new friends and share great games with them, and the games industry may not be dead after all. So, also, here's my Game On Steam. Please wish list it. Thank you.
That's how you do a lighting.
Hi, my name is Seabeth. I host the weekly meetups at the White Bison. So I've been making games since I was a little kid. I started by making like tabletop games to play with like family and friends, and a few years ago I started making like computer games to play with family and friends. Today the game I want to talk about is a prototype I made a couple years ago called High Tension that sort of started out as a tabletop game, then transitioned to a digital game. And so it was a turn-based strategy game with a like competitive two-player thing. And my goal with this was to make a game that sort of revolved around reads, like predicting what the opponent was going to do, and then sort of committing to like counterplays. And one thing I really wanted to avoid with this game was to sort of avoid lame duck situations where one player didn't have a path to victory, but the game still had like an hour to go or just 5 minutes to go, any amount of time. So in order to try and get around that, I tried to add like really powerful defensive options to this game, so that if you could just make consecutive like reads about what your opponent was going to do, then you could just avoid taking damage for the rest of the game and sort of enable these really dramatic comeback situations. But one problem that I sort of ran into was that the defensive options were actually too good, and players had no incentive to attack. Games would get really attritional, and they'd sort of drag out, and it was really boring to watch and play. And the game just felt kind of statically, like you were just sort of playing rock, paper, scissors over and over again, but like you weren't, like, one decision didn't really, like, have any impact on the game state, like, 3 turns from that. And so the solution I ended up coming up with was the tension point system. So the idea was that each turn, your units would all have like a tension gauge, and the tension gauge would increase every turn. And then when a unit attacked, the amount of damage that it inflicted was dependent on the tension gauge. So high tension gauge means more damage. And then when a unit attacked and hit something, it would spend all of its tension points. And crucially, the unit that it hit would lose all of its tension points as well. And so the implications of this was that it like really incentivized attacking because you wanted to be the first person to get in a hit because if they hit you first, then your damage output would then just like drop because you would just lose all your tension points. So it really helped with that. It also really helped with if players like did play really defensively, like they'd both be building up tension points so that the first person to like go in and get an attack would get off a really big attack. So it sort of caps the length of games by making sure that the fewer attacks that the players sort of get off, the bigger those attacks are going to be. And then it also made the game play a lot more dynamic because instead of sort of having like one best unit or whatever that you kind of want to focus on, the focus of the action would sort of shift depending on who has the most tension points. Because on any given turn, you want to be attacking with your units that have the highest tension, and you want to be targeting the units that have the highest tension so that you can deny your opponent those offensive resources. And so as a result, as the tension points sort of fluctuated, like your sort of focus would be shifting from different parts of the board. And so it made the game a lot more exciting and engaging to play. So I sort of learned from that like I could make my games a lot more interesting by sort of adding these like time-sensitive windows for action into my game loops. So in this case, that being like if you get hit, you lose all your tension points, and so you want to use them when you can, and that those use it or lose it dynamics, like they really make the game a lot more interesting and cooler. So yeah, that's what we got. Thank you.
There we go. All right, I'm John. I make games, been part of this group for a while. And I am now trying to make a game without an engine. So having to do things like make a game loop, so that's what I'm gonna talk about. I hope I can do this in 5 minutes. So what is a game loop? Why do you care? It's a coding pattern to keep your game running. So a loop of some process that continually run. It's suitable for real-time simulations. But also really for any game, as you'll become apparent in a little bit. If you've used a game engine, you probably used one. So Unity has update, fixed update, Godot process, physics process. Unreal I don't know a lot about, but actor tech groups when I looked up. So these are the processes that you run frequently to time your game, essentially. So imagine this is the top level of your program right here. While true, it's just going to loop forever. At some point, we'll exit out. But the 3 main elements to a game loop are handling input. So, for example, setting the player velocity to 10. I know velocity is usually more than one value, but let's just pretend it's 1 to be simple. Update is where you run your physics simulation or animation. So, assign a velocity to a position. That chart under it with the T and the positions are just showing tick 1, you're at 0. Tick 2, you're at 10, 20, 40, etc. You're adding your velocity. Render is when you're drawing all of your stuff. So this is, you're only reading state, you're not setting your state. In this case, what's going to happen, it's just going to run as fast as your computer is going. So 200, 300 frames a second, who knows? Or it can run really slow, depending on how much time it's going to take. So that's not going to work, even though in some ways this is ideal because it's the simplest thing and it's ultimately what you want to model. You just want to have it at a constant rate. So we could force a delay, which this just adds knowing how long the previous frame took, and then saying we're going to wait that long after the processing. So take the time before, take the time after, wait until it's done. This works for slowing it down. You're not going to go faster than this time step we've defined 60 times a second, but you're going to go a whole lot slower if it takes longer than the time step, because your value in weight will be negative. So that's not going to work. So we can fix this with a variable time step, which is you take that same elapsed time between the frames and then you pass it into the update function. So if you have a delta time in your game engine, that's what this typically is, like Unity update function. You can query the delta time. This is some percentage of time that's elapsed, and you can adjust your simulation to account for that. And then you render. Seems like this would work, right? Well, there's some problems with just using this approach, which the main one in red here is it's not deterministic. If you have a really small number, if you have a really large number for that delta time, and you multiply all your physics, your entire game simulation, strange things will happen. So from the wisdom of the game industry, this doesn't work at scale. So there's some other reasons too this doesn't work. So how do we fix that? We decouple the rendering from the update. So what this does, it's not even that much more complicated, but you see this lag variable. We've introduced a time step again. So we're only going to hit this update, the simulation, 60 times a second. And the way we do that, though, is we accumulate this lag from the elapsed time left over. So let's say it's 4 times the time step, 4 over 60. It's going to run the update 4 times in a row, and then you'll have 0 lag left over, and then you render. Let's say you have, it matches up exactly. Then it's not a problem, you're running at the same speed. And you can kind of visualize this by this chart here, where it might update the game loop, run the simulation, the update game a bunch of times, if lag is great. If it's less than time step, it's going to skip that entirely, and you're just going to render as fast as you can. There's one problem with that, which is you have a leftover lag time. So let's say it's 3.5 times the time step is the elapsed time since the last frame. You're going to run the update 3 times, and then you're going to have, if you're halfway through, you'll be 50%, the render, that last function is going to be 50% behind. And that chart can kind of demonstrate that. That's a little weird to look at, but you see the render, okay. So essentially you pass in this to interpolate your rendering. So you draw something 50% ahead of where it would have been, because you know that's how far you are behind, and that's it. And I drew very heavily on these sources, so if that was confusing or you want to more know about it, then look at these links, because pretty much it's like a regurgitation of those first 2 articles posted, trying to identify them. So that's it.
Hi, my name's Corey. In the early, I'm gonna read it. In the early 2010s, there was a void left wide open by the Story of Seasons or Harvest Moon series of games. Many farm life simulation game fans felt that the series had gotten worse, and that it failed to iterate, expand, and improve on the genre. Fans were hungry. Eric Barone, or Concerned Ape, was one of those hungry fans. And he decided to make a game that would satisfy that hunger. And so in 2016, after toiling away for years, Stardew Valley was released to widespread acclaim. As of the current year, 2024, the game has sold over 30 million copies. What followed Stardew's release I find to be really interesting. After years of drought in the farm life simulation genre came game after game in that genre. Games clearly inspired by Stardew Valley. It's incredible because it requires a lot of work and skill to make one of these games. But if these developers possess the skills and work ethic necessary to make the games in Stardew Valley's wake, that means they probably could have made these games before Stardew. After all, the inspirations for Stardew were not esoteric by any means. Harvest Moon, Story of Seasons, Minecraft, Terraria, Animal Crossing, Rune Factory. I'm sure you've all heard of most of these games. The ingredients were all there in the communal kitchen for anyone to use, and hungry patrons could be seen in the dining room. It's almost like developers were waiting for permission to make such a game, and Eric Barone was the man who gave them that permission. But why wait for permission? Any farm life simulation game that follows Stardew will find it difficult to match up in terms of value added to the market, and more importantly, the medium. If they had preceded Stardew, perhaps they could have been Stardew. They could have redefined the genre. They could have been the benchmark. That's not to say that there's no value in variation and iteration on recent popular games. But is it not better to fill large voids than to create excess? Is the first route into the frontier not more important than the routes that follow? Is a well not more valuable in a desert than a rainforest? I say that given our limited time on Earth and how much work it takes to make a game, we should seek to maximize the value we add. We should be mindful, and when we recognize opportunities, we should seize them. And so ask yourselves, what games do you really want to see made? What markets are underserved? And what genres have yet to have their potential realized? Such opportunities may be more easy to find than you might think, and maybe you've got what it takes. If you're hungry, and others are hungry, get out of your chair, leave the dining room, walk into the kitchen, and start cooking. You already have permission. Thank you. I have a minute and 12 seconds if anybody has questions, but I don't know what questions there could possibly be.
Do you know this guy personally, or no? Just a
He's very famous for a really popular game.
What are you hungry to make?
I want to make an Animal Crossing clone.
When's it coming out?
Probably when I'm 45.
So, but that's the development time.
A little longer, yeah.
More like episode 30.
All right, thank you.